So a summary of the Maamer, which is a little pashut kol kach. Yeah, so Aaron, the summary of the Maamer. Mendel, welcome. So Vayehi b'shalach parei sa'om. Yeah, good morning. So Parei sends the people, so in Torah he says, again, this is based on the Lashon HaPosuk and Midrash Chazal, as we'll see later, but this is Del Rebbe's words, that he sent with him pa'arois, crowns, not peiros, v'anofim, and branches. The idea being the nitzutz kedusha that you didn't elevate in Golus Mitzrayim. And the Rebbe brings it the various psukim that where Hashem describes Yidden as his planting, his grain, and so on, his seed. Haboyim yashtesh Yaakov, and then Yotit Porach Yidden, days are coming when there's different taichani, but days are coming that the Yidden that were planted in the ground. This was the after of Pasha Shmois, the opening words. Yotit Porach, they will blossom, they will and flower. I'll call Pnei Sevel over the face of the earth. So the idea being that Dafkin Golus is the growth in the Tzutzik Dusha, elevated and so on. He wanted to say that's the meaning of that the Gemara says in Psachim that Yidden were only exiled amongst the Ummahs in order to attract the Gedim. And bringing this posik of a seed, you plant the seed, it's not to get the seed back, it's to get a greater yield. You plant the saw to get Kamakurin. So Chassidus says it doesn't just go on Gedim Kipshuta, which are few in number over the millennia, but Bechlolis, it goes on the Tzutzik Dusha, Dvarim Gashim that you didn't elevate. And that's why we're separated. Another Maamer Chazal. Another Maamer Chazal that reflects the the Pasuk says Tzidkas Pizroinoi. It's referring there to, in the context of Yoel and the war against Sisera, and then they'll be able to dwell in open cities, not fearing of invaders. The Gemara says in the word Pizroinoi that it's a tzedakah that David did, that he spread Lashon Pizr, Yidden all over the world. The simple meaning is that, God forbid, they are decimated in one place, they'll survive because they're elsewhere. But the Pnimius, the tzedakah is, then it's Tzutzik Dusha. And that leads to, in the end, Prozos Teishev Yerushalayim, that when Mashiach will come, no longer the need for a walled city. Yerushalayim will be an open city, also implying, embracing the whole world, all being elevated. The Shaila was, however, what does it mean that Parei sends? Parei is part of this. It's despite Parei, kind of. It's even in the question is not that clear, not to me. But anyway, the question is, okay, we said that being in Mitzrayim, you elevate in Tzutzik Dusha. Good, so we've done the job. We've taken the Tzutzik Dusha. We're out of there. Parei is not sending us. We're done with them. Why is he the sender? And Befrat the Kasha is stronger, that the Medrash actually makes the question very strong. Parei sends. The Eibishter sends. Bilam said that Keil Mitziyam in Mitzrayim. And here it says B'shalach, which we learned that B'shalach means he accompanied them. So again, he's still accompanying them in their Yitzias Mitzrayim, which the Maamer will continue to explain. There's an interesting diak in the Maamer here, that how do we know this Inyan? How do we get to this idea, which we're going to explain, that Parei sent them and Parei accompanies them and Parei is integral to their growth? It's because contrasting this pasuk with the way Bilam describes Yitzias Mitzrayim, and Bilam describes Yitzias Mitzrayim, Keil Mitziyam in Mitzrayim, in Pashas Balak. And who is Bilam? Bilam is the counter to Moshe Rabbeinu. The Maamer does not elaborate, but he said, I think he says the words V'yumtok. It'll be It's sweeter to appreciate that who is the one that brings out this Inyan. It's the counter of Moshe Rabbeinu. No elaboration, but Moshe Rabbeinu, of course, is the whole architect of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and his counter is Bilam. So Bilam, the pasuk says that no Novi arose by Eden like Moshe. Says the Medrash not by Eden, but by Goyim, yes, and who was it? Was Bilam. Rashi says that they would have had a tanya if you've given us a man of such stature, we would also be good. So they gave him a Bilam, and he brought immorality to the world. Akoponim, but he's the counter of Moshe Rabbeinu. So he brings out the whole mile of Yetzias Mitzrayim at its depth, being the opposite of the Tachlis HaKdusha. He brings out the Tachlis HaKdusha, being its opposite. Something like that. Other diyukim too, that this is written in Mechilta, that this is explained in Medrash, not in Mechilta, because Mechilta is like the halacha part of Medrash, and Medrash is the Pnimius. Okay, it takes the Bilam, the Pnimius, which Medrash, which reveals the Pnimius of everything, to bring out that it's Bilam that brings out the whole Maila of what? Vayehi b'shalach parah. But so we have to understand, what does it mean? What does it mean? Pari says, Lo yadati es Hashem. So what's he giving to Eden? What is he contributing to Eden? It begins the answer of Yeshloimer. He says, another medrash, it says, Pari hikrev, Pari drew near. It says in Shmeis Rabbah, in Midrashim, hikrev es libam shel Yisrael avim shebashamayim. He drew near the hearts of Yidden to their Father in heaven. In other words, Pari pales the union of tshuva, which is the greater force, even higher than tzaddikim. Why? Because he says tshuva needs to return from a place where you were. You have to go back there. It doesn't just mean on Avedas, but that's in return, drawing nearer and nearer. Has to be a place from where you're leaving. So therefore, integral to the whole union of tshuva, which is the ultimate maila, is Pari hikriv. There's the union of Pari and Mitzrayim, and that brings the maila of tshuva. This is the outline. That's his hapche. And that's the outline. What's not clear to me is that this was said to the outside. He concludes his base with, and that's the teichna of Bir HaNitzutzis. Maybe we'll see later, so what's he added now? That's what we said at the outset. Going down to Mitzrayim is the aliyah of Bir HaNitzutzis. He was adding the union of tshuva. So there can be Bir HaNitzutzis without tshuva. Pari pales the union of tshuva. It's not clear. It'll become clear, I would assume, later. Somebody has insight, please feel free to share it. Okay. Gimmel began. How could it be? How do you transform darkness into light? They're opposites. And especially according to the Shitta, which Chassidus adopts, or Be'ikr, although there's two levels, that Choshech is not merely the absence of light, but it's actually a Bria Bifnei Atzma. It's a creation independent. Because it's a separate koyach. So it's how's it transformed? The answer is through a giloi based on the Magid, Eisa Shalom bin Breimov, Michal Sar Shamayim, and Gavil Sar Shalesh, Ve'imachabim Ze'azeh. They don't extinguish one the other. How is that? Eisa, he makes Shalom bin Breimov because this is a darge which is higher than Eir, higher than Cheshech, higher than Chesed and Gevura. And therefore, Choshech can be transformed. And that's tshuva. That's what tshuva does, we were saying. That's what Pari hikriv. Pari is pales, the union of tshuva. And what's tshuva? Tshuva draws in a level that's higher than Chesed and Gevurah, Choshech and Oyer. And as he concludes there, that's where we're up to right now, that Torah mitzvahs, therefore, relative to tshuva, is an Oyer Mugbal. Such an oil that Choshech is an opposite and incompatible with. Torah Torah mitzvahs is kedusha, it's purity. And choshech is tumah, and they are incompatible. Tumah does not become toher, becomes banished. But tshuva actually pearls an inyan of what? Of transformation. Why? Because it draws on a higher level than classic Torah and mitzvahs, and that is the inyan of parei. Accompanying them, this constant pressure that elicits oil that's even higher than classic kedusha. So now this is what we're up to, and we're going to explore this further. So far, so good, more or less. Yeah? Okay, let's go. Now, so with the second ois of ois Gimmel. And now is when it starts the connection, the hemshech to the previous Maamer. I have to get all the psukim and Marech Hazal straight, because it's all in the diukim of the words. So this is also what's this also? The birur of the Tzutze Kedusha, the Avodas HaTshuva, that is pearl, that is affected by parei. Zeh gam mashakos of toiv shem mishem and toiv. Better a good name than good oil. It's a pasuk in Keheles. Pashat Pshat. One of the pirushim is that a fragrant oil, so it produces an aroma. But as the aroma it projects from the oil, it gets weaker. But a good name only gains traction, gains intensity. That's one of the pirushim of the pasuk. Al Pichsidis now, and it's explained. The Tzemach Tzedek on Kehela said, the Shem and Toiv, good oil, that's what Kerela Aved Torah mitzvahs. And what we bring you out here, let's get the flow. The Ma'il of Tshuva, Beruri, and then it's over Torah mitzvahs. That's going to be the Shem Toiv, the good name, or Toiv Shem. So Shem and Toiv goes now Aved Torah mitzvahs. You know, Shem and Sheba Menorah. What's the connection to oil? What's oil for the menorah? And the menorah shayba zayin kanim, and the oil had 7 branches. Keneged zayin efane havayda chulu, corresponding to the 7 different paths in avodah, the avodah of chesed, the avodah of gvur, and so on. However, the inyan toiv shem, but the good name is better. Koel al bidur and itzutish belumas. This goes in the avodah of elevating the sparks. That's going to connect us to the shemus, right? Inyan tshuva. She said, Inyan Shem. Now, this is also indicated before it gets into the Zayin Shemus, in the very word name itself. What's the word Shem? It's 340. I didn't add this up, so please do it. Shuba Gematria Rapach Bang. This is the Gematria 248 plus 52. Yeah? Quick calculation, somebody. Is that 340? Chaim, our content. Yeah, stimmt? Good. We can rely on the mind, but you have to make the calculation yourself. What's the inyan? As we all know, the Reish Peches, the 200, V'ruch Elikim, Merachefes al Pnei Amayim, the Spirit of Hashem hovered over the water. Says the Arizal, the word Merachefes is Reish Peches Mes. These are the 200, let's say 40, 288. 288, that's the cheshbon. 288 and 52 should be 340. The 288, yeah. A sparks mess died that fell embedded into where? The Gashmi So'ilam. And that's the whole kavanah of creation, is to elevate those sparks. Right, just to complete the picture, V'gam Eirev Rav Olu Itam, and a mixed multitude went up with them. These are the sparks that were elevated in Mitzrayim. Rav Bim Gematria 202. So 202 from 288 leaves 86. And this is the last 86, Gematria Shem Alikim, the last 86 sparks, which are fragmented, of course, into many fragments, which are left to be elevated. As time progresses and we get closer to Basi Mashiach, the sparks are smaller, meaning to say the avodah is not so earth-shattering and not to dig so deep, and it's not in dramatic and drastic changes, but in dramatic but subtle changes in the small minutiae of our lives. Hence, before Mashiach comes, Chassidus introduced the whole Indian of Hidur Mitzvah and all kinds of detail and nuance that were not necessary or observed or even known of in previous generations. Why? This is all part of the final birurim, very small paratim and details in Avodas Hashem, and for that matter, in elevating the world. I've mentioned this before, so I'll just mention again briefly that the world itself, in the way we relate to it over the last 50 years, 100 years, has dramatically changed. The world has become a much more detailed place. Tiny details. Go back 100 years, first of all, a person could live a whole life in a radius of 50 miles, never leave, or even less than that. Now everybody's connected to the whole world, and connected to the whole world in myriads of details. Your phone has myriads, 100 millions of components that come from all over the world. You use your phone in Kedusha, so you're elevating all of these tiny little sparks, as it were, which are part of bigger sparks, the 86 sparks, the Pei Vav sparks, which we're now elevating. At any rate, that's in the Varesh Peches. What's Ban? You all know what Ban is. Ban is, what, anybody remembers? Shem Ban. Ban is Gematria 52. What's that? So you remember, right, that the Milui, the spelling of Shem Havaya, has 4 classic different ways. And it all revolves around the way the Milui, the way letters are spelled out in their full sense. The letter Hey is one of the main differentials here. It can be spelled Hey Yud, Hey Aleph, or Hey, rendering different gematrias, meaning the Milui is the main midah that dominates Shem Havaya, the main svira. So Shem Ban we're spelling it with a Hey. The Milui is Hey. Yud Kevavke is spelled with the Milui of the Hey. It's in the Hey, that's the difference. And that is 52. And what's Hey? Hey is Malchus. And Malchus, what's Malchus? Malchus b'derech klal is what? Avodah of the Aliyah melamata l'mayla. Holy in the Malchus, the whole nature of speech. Without going to all of the pratim, but we're all familiar that Malchus is already the receiver, the focus on the receiver, and the receiver's contribution. That's the Aliyah of Malchus. So in summary, Reish Peches Ban, which is Gematria Shem, means that the 288 sparks, or now the 86, are elevated through the Avodah of Malchus, which is Knesset Yisrael, Shem Ban, Malchus, our Avodah. Bottom line, Birurei Hanitzutis. As he goes on to say, so the word Shem, name, means the birur nitzutzitz that we do through our avodah. And then he's going to, in Ois Daled, connected to the inyan of Hashem, design Shemus, and what we learned about in the previous Maamer, to be elaborated in the next one even greater, with greater elaboration. So going back to another pasuk, it means, as he started off saying, the mile of tshuva, excuse me, where do we see the condition to shame? In another place, Mishnah Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah says in Perek Daled, Shleishik Sorim Hein, there are 3 crowns, Keseh Torah, Keseh Kuna, and Keseh Malchus. And then the Keseh Shem Tov, Erdal Gabeim. But the crown of a good name transcends all of them. Same Nekudak, that's the Avodah of Tshuva. Now, what does it have to do with the union of a shame of a name? Again, we'll see in Ois Daled. So we're clear. So the three ksorim, that's Torah mitzvahs. Torah, Kahuna, Malchus. Means Malchus based David. Malchus means mice. Here, Malchus means mice b'peil, mitzvahs. So it's Torah, Kahuna, and Beis Hamikdash and mitzvahs. But Kesher Shem Tov Zel Gabeim. So meaning Zem Rumas with Pasuk Shem Tov Shem, and this is hinted to also in the Pasuk Shem Tov. Another thing. Sha'is tes the toiv who tes rapsi. If you look in the Keheles, so the letter toiv of the letter tes of the word toiv is enlarged. So there's three sizes of letters, but they're klal. The letters in we're talking about Tanakh, b'chlal throughout Tanakh. Generally, they are Oises Beininis, average size. Then you have Zirei, small letters on occasion, and large letters. Kaneda being an Asfin, Zidin, Asfin, Beinin, Asfin, Ravrevin. That it's known from the Zohar, the distinction between small Zidin and Beinin, average, and Ravrevin, large. And that is Asfin, Beinin, Koyal, Alba, the Torah mitzvahs. Beinin goes on what? The Avodah of Torah mitzvahs. That's the straight and the usual avodah. Tvidim kesidra, maybe they bring the same karbonas, predictable and dependable. Yasvin Ravrav in Shalomali Manashura, and letters which go above the line, the big letters called avodah tshuva, that's avodah of tshuva, and the small ones avodah of bittul. Shal yoda nimshach eir bilti mugbal. It's from there that comes this infinite eir, which is able to do the impossible, namely mahapach gam mesacheshach la'eir. So this was elaboration, Vizel, elaborating the point of the previous, that this Ois Gimmel began with the Ma'ila of Avodah Tshuva, which is affected by who? Dafka by Paroi. The Ma'ila of Avodah Tshuva of the Avodah of Torah mitzvahs. We're clear? Okay, now comes the Yesh Lekasher is Dalit. Yesh Lekasher in Zeh Mashnes Beliel. We're going to connect this, what we explained before, to the Maamer of Basi L'Gani of Friday night. It's to Shabbos day. It's 3 Maamer, imagine that. Friday night shall be the Fabrengen. Mitzvah Shabbos, the big Yud Shvat Fabrengen. So being Zayin Hashem, Yeshen Yedim Chokim. So we explained there about the 7 names of the Eibishter, which cannot be erased, which means the Kedusha, Sharigam, Binyan Tov Shem, Wudgishin Hashem. We're talking about a good name. So what are we stressing here? The idea of a shame of a name. So therefore, we're going to explain the connection to everything we said till now about the Shem Tov and the Zayin Shemes. It's not what the Tzemach Tzedek writes in various places, including Sheish Mitzvahs Atfilo. Some of you, I think, learned. Shemavu Etzein B'Shem Abal Shem Tov. The Shema Satan writes at Tzemach Tzedek that it's handed down or explained to us the name of the Baal Shem Tov as follows: Shekol Mashi Yichusam Lukabalim Hashem is Leses Sviris, that the Mekabalim related, associated, the various Shemis to the Eses Sviris. Says the Baal Shem Tov, Ein Akavon al Guf HaSvirim Mamesh. When we're invoking these names, we do not mean literally the body of the Svira itself. Shar Svira Himida. The Svira is a midah, a measured expression of a likus, literally. A midah means measure. But we say Hashem, we are connecting and being mechavan to the Eibush himself. The Sifri says in the Pasuk, a love. He's close to us. Whenever we call upon him, says the Sifri, as quoted in the previous Maamer. Nova then continues the Baal Shem Tov, but the Kavana is the Atzmus of Alikus and Belubish B'Sviris, which is invested in the Sviris. So far, we hear this word, which is invested in the Sviris. This is open-ended. What do we mean? What do we mean by the oil invested in Sviris? Now, having learned the previous Maamer, we know it can be one of two things. It could mean the oil the koyach habligvul that is in the svidus, like the mush of the water in a colored glass, or it could mean the chayis of the svidus themselves. So we said it means the chayis of the svidus. The Rebbe is revisiting this now from the beginning with greater elaboration, and the next Maamer greater elaboration still. And chidushim. And this Maamer too, Mr. Let's see it. So far we have this blanket statement of the Baal Shem Tov that we don't mean the Svid itself, but we mean Atmos Elikos Melubish in the Svidis. Now, this is also brought down in the Yisavos L'Kotei Torah. Also sounds like Tzemach Tzedek. Maybe it's the Alter Rebbe there. Look it up. Av L'Kotei Torah. By looking it up over there, we don't have an answer to our question. Does it mean the oil that's mislabish, which is mean again the bligvul property, or the oil that it animates literally the kelim, the keichagvul. V'hainu does the Baal Shem Tov mean the oil or the chayis of the kelim themselves? So Tzemach Tzedek explains. So they suffers and says like that's the Alter Rebbe. Yeah. So Tzemach Tzedek explains there in Sheish Mitzvah Tefillah and other places. He comes to the conclusion and proves it, and we're getting a summary of it right here. Shekavonas of the Tzemach Tzedek's whole beard as follows: Shekavonas Baal Shem Tov elachayis akelim atzma. Baal Shem Tov means the chayis of the kelim themselves. Now the raya. Who, Mishakos Tzemach Tzedek, as he writes, Tzemach Tzedek Mishakos B'Kisvei Arizal. The Arizal writes like this: B'bir ha'hefesh ben Shem Havaya l'Shar Hashemus. The Arizal writes that the difference between the Shem Havaya and the other Shemus, Shem Havaya hu ba'oris, v'Shar Hashemus in b'kelim. Now, if he says outright, the Shar Hashemis is what is Bekalim. And the Baal Shem Tov said it's what? It's not the Shem itself, but the Oir can be the Oir because that's Shem Havaya. So what does he mean? In order therefore to the Tavach to harmonize, to reconcile. Between the words of the Arizal, Shashemis Heim Bakalim, the Arizal contrasts Shemus, all the other ones with Shem Havaya, and he says Shem Havaya is Oir, but the Shemus Hakelim. Im Divri Baal Shem Tov, Shashemis in Ba'oris, Baal Shem Tov says no, it's what's mislabish in them. What Oir do we mean? Sorich Loimer, not the Eira Bligvul, that's Shem Havaya. Shekavanas Baal Shem Tov, Loi Loiris HaMislabshim B'Kelim. Again, that would be Shem Havaya. Ella, like that Arizal says, the Shemus themselves, the Kelim. Shemus means the Kelim, sorry. Ella L'chayis HaKelim Atzma. Clear? Is that clear? Can't go further without this being clear. Yeah? Yes? V'nimtzo, so it comes out. Shepirish Baal Shem Tov she'elav leili midoisav. Baal Shem Tov is tied to Elav, we're addressing him, and not his midis koil al chayes hakelim atzmam. That now that he says that the chayes of the kelim itself, who be'oimik yosim mepirish hapardes, this is even deeper than the pardes. Now it seems to me the pardes is not saying something else. Then, the Arizal, it is clear. The Arizal is not, it doesn't elaborate anymore on the Shemus. Shemus is the Kelim. What is the Pardes? It actually comes before the Arizal. It's the Ramak. This is the Pardes Rimonim, one of the Arizal's, Rebbe. So what is the, let's just see what this is quoted earlier in the previous mind. What does the Pardes say? She'elu le'midois of koi ala oira malubish ba'kelim. So that l'chayr is bestited to the Arizal, who says the Keli themselves. The Oir is Shem Havaya. I will leave that aside. But now we're talking about the Baal Shem Tov and the Pardes. And he's saying that Baal Shem Tov's taich is higher. Look, so it sounds like here, if I'm not mistaken, that there's a chiluk yedayas. The Pardes says that this goes the Oir. And the Rizal said clearly, Shem Havaya is Oiris, Shar Hashem is his Kelim. So now he's saying that the Baal Shem Tov is deeper than the Pardes. The Pardes lifted us to the Oir, not to the Keli. But the Baal Shem Tov said the Chai is in the Keli, and that's higher even the Oir, as he learned in the previous Maamer, that the Koyach HaGvul is rooted deep in the Koyach HaBli. The Chai in the Keli themselves is higher even than the Oir. L'chora, this is the Pshat. So it's even higher than the Pardes who says it goes on the Oir. Why? Unlike the Arizal. Even though manifestedly the chayis and the kelim, it's limited, it's finite, and it's lower than the pshittus of the oil. Again, like the water, which is pshittus, it's colorless and pure, which is in the colored vessel, the colored glass. So b'chitzonius, the keli is lower. However, in the b'shorashin aliyoseh, the sherish of the kelim is high. He doesn't use the isis. I'm telling you, because the sherish koyach hagvul is rooted deep in the koyach habligvul. Again, his pashtus is natural. Containment is unnatural. So if Hashem took Vayochel contain himself, Vayochel, this is a deeper investure than expressing himself. He's el gibber hakoyvish esitzvay. True mightiness is not an expression but in containment. Kiyadua, it's known the diuk, being in Iya v'chayirchad, Iya v'garmoyachad. He, going on the Eibishter, is one with his chayis, his oil. And he, the Eibishter, is one with his garmoy, his causations, literally, which means kelim. Kiyadua, this is from 51. Rebbe Marash, Mayim Rabim, there he says, Shebchinas iyo shemisyachdim garmoyhu. The Eibishter being united, the level of the Eibishter invested with his kelim, that ihu is not, in other words, he asked, Rebbe Marash asks, why say the word ihu twice? This is the diak and the zayah. The Zoya says, he and the Rosh Hashanah is Iya v'chayirchad, he and his oil is one, he and his kelim, garmoy kelim one. Just say, ihu chad, he is one, im chayoyi v'garmoyi, with his chayis, with his oil, with his kelim. Why does the Zoya say the word ihu twice? The diak and Marash is that the second ihu is deeper. That what's invested in chayoyi, in garmoy is deeper, in kelim deeper than oil. So the Hashem Tov's taich is deeper than the paradise. So it comes out the fizel l'chor, the maskana is as follows. There's no stir between the Arizal and the Hashem Tov. That was reconciled. The Arizal said that oir Shem Havaya, and the other Shem is a kelim. The Hashem Tov said it's not the keli, it's the oir and the keli. No, it doesn't mean the oir, the pshitas of the oir. It means the koyach hagvul, the chayis that's in the keli. And comes out that's even higher than the pardes. The pardes is said on all the shemis it goes on the oir. And what Shem Havaya explains whatever he explains. The Hashem Tov's taich is deeper than the pardes. Are we clear? Fellas, yeah?